On this Friday's edition of Primetime News, for the first time, Seoul and Washington will adopt a joint statement on Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. The historic event will follow the summit talks between President Park Geun-hye and her U.S. counterpart Barack Obama. Despite his valiant and relentless efforts, South Korean Defense Minister fails to gain permission for transfer of key U.S. technologies that could play a significant role in South Korea's fighter jet project. 2016 Seoul Fashion Week kicks off on Friday. It's a work in progress, but nonetheless will lay the foundation for the country's fashion industry to gain greater global recognition. For more, stay tuned. Hello, welcome to Primetime News. I'm Daniel Choy. Day 3 of President Park Geun-hye's visit to the United States. In Washington, she stressed the importance of a strong alliance with the U.S. in dealing with North Korea. Calling it the strongest alliance in the world, she said the two countries' ties will be upgraded through the reunification of the Korean peninsula. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
한미 동맹은 한반도 남녘에서 많은 기적의 성공 스토리를 만들어냈습니다. 이제 그 기적의 역사를 한반도 전역으로 확대해 나가야 할 때입니다.
That was President Park's key message before U.S. officials and academics at the Center for Strategic and International Studies on Thursday. She said South Korea and the U.S. must exert their leadership to encourage North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program and open up to the world. This, the president said, would be the most certain way to bring about sustainable peace on the Korean peninsula. President Park noted that the Seoul-Washington alliance will be upgraded through the reunification of the Koreas and evolve into an alliance that stands for humanity. The emphasis on the alliance was also clear during her visit to the Pentagon earlier in the day. Speaking to a group of South Korean and American soldiers, President Park said they were the core of what is now the strongest alliance in the world.
한미 장병 여러분들이 어깨를 나란히 하고 같이 근무하는 모습을 보면서 또 자유의 최전선에 함께 서 있는 여러분들이야말로 한미 동맹의 심장이라고 생각을 했었습니다. Korea, thanks you. We go together.
Upgrading their alliance will top the agenda at Friday's summit between President Park and President Obama. The two leaders are also expected to adopt a joint statement on better countering North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News, Washington.
Also, President Park Geun-hye and President Barack Obama are expected to reaffirm their commitment in dealing with North Korea through a joint statement. However, some experts say the statement could prompt backlash from Pyongyang. Connie Kim sheds light on such potential side effects.
South Korea and the U.S. will adopt a joint statement solely on North Korea's weapons program for the first time following the two-leader summit on Friday. Although the statement is still in the works, it's expected to include ways to resume the long-stalled nuclear talks, counter North Korea's provocations, and include details for North Korean economic development should the regime give up its nuclear arms. Seoul and Washington's statement on North Korea's nuclear programs comes amid speculation Pyongyang could launch a long-range rocket. Experts say the joint statement could pressure the reclusive regime.
North Korea's regime will be pressured by the joint statement. There is a possibility Pyongyang will express dissatisfaction with the statement and respond accordingly.
Analysts said Pyongyang's response could come in the form of strong words or a passive attitude towards holding high-level inter-Korean talks. A broad range of issues, including the economy and pending international issues, will also be covered at the summit. The White House said the South Korea-U.S. free trade agreement and climate change issues are likely to be on the agenda of the two leaders' talks. It'll be the fourth summit between Presidents Park and Obama since the South Korean leader took office in early 2013. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
President Park also hinted at the possibility of a summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of trilateral talks between Korea, Japan, and China, set for later this month or early next month. The key agenda will be, of course, Japan's acknowledgement of its wartime sex crimes. Song Ji-sun tells us more.
Speaking at a Q&A session following her speech at the Center for Strategic and International Studies Forum, President Park Geun-hye said she hopes the upcoming trilateral summit with Japan and China will serve as an opportunity to mend Seoul-Tokyo relations. On the sidelines of that summit, slated for sometime in late October or early November, President Park says she is willing to sit down with Abe, saying it would be meaningful if progress is made on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II.
한일중 정상회의를 계기로 한일 양국 관계를 가로막고 있는 장애물을 제거하고 미래 지향적 발전 방향을 깊이 논의할 수 있기를 바라고 있습니다.
The two leaders have yet to hold a summit, as bilateral relations remain at a historic low due to Japan's denial of its wartime atrocities. In response to President Park's latest remarks, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said that the two sides should discuss the matter on multiple levels, hinting a slight change in Tokyo's stance towards the issue. Kyodo News also reported Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was quoted as saying Tokyo will hold bilateral summits with Seoul and Beijing on the sidelines of the trilateral talks, which will take place for the first time in 3.5 years. 송지선, Arirang News.
Washington told Seoul it is difficult to permit the transfer of 4 core technologies crucial to Korea's indigenous fighter jet development project. Well, it could take a long time, but South Korean military says there are other ways to develop the necessary technology. For details, let's turn to our Kim Hyun-bin.
Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu held talks with his U.S. counterpart Ashton Carter at the Pentagon on Thursday local time, and asked him to reconsider Seoul's request of 4 key technology transfers. Carter said it will be difficult to grant Seoul's request, but that the two countries can explore ways to increase technological cooperation. The two defense chiefs agreed to establish a consultative forum to discuss ways to increase cooperation in defense technology, including the KFX project. Among the 4 technologies, the ASA multipurpose radar and RF jammers used to disrupt or prevent communication via a broadcasted RF signal have never been transferred outside of the U.S.
If the U.S. doesn't transfer the technologies, we will have to work with either England, Sweden or Israel, who are favorable candidates for the task.
The 4 technologies are critical to the KFX project, which aims to produce 120 fighter jets to replace South Korea's aging fleet of F-4 and F-5s. Even without transfer from the U.S., Korea's defense ministry advanced its development plan.
Our Defense Ministry has advanced the deadline to develop the KFX project. There are only a few cases of countries developing their fighter jets on time and within budget. So it looks like ministry officials are trying to pass responsibility to their successors.
The South Korean military says Korea is capable of developing the ASA radar by the year 2021, and the other 3 technologies by mid-2020. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
It's finally happening. Families separated for 65 years because of a tragic war that divided a nation in 2 will be reunited with long-lost relatives across the border. And the South Korea's Unification Ministry had more good news for them when they revealed the final itinerary for the event. The farewell session on the last day, is extended by an hour to 2 hours for the first time, following Pyongyang's agreement to the proposal. 6 sessions, each lasting for 2 hours, will take place over the 3 days, including reporters and officials. A total of 938 South Koreans will travel to the reunion venue of Mount Kumgang. The first round will begin on October 20th, with 96 families in the north reuniting with their South Korean relatives. 1 family from the north had to be withdrawn from the initial list as their South Korean relatives canceled due to health reasons. The second round of reunions will take place on October 24th, also for 3 days, with 90 South Korean families expected to meet their relatives from the north. In local politics, the hot topic of debate at the National Assembly continues to be the government's recent decision to have greater control of what goes into history textbooks starting from 2017. Park Ji-won zooms in on the ongoing rumble.
On the last day of Parliament's interpellation session on Friday, ruling Saenuri Party lawmakers reiterated that the government's goal is to correct any biased views about the nation's modern history, which includes misleading descriptions about the cause of the Korean War, lenient views on North Korea, and a harsh criticism of South Korea's post-war industrialization period. Conservative lawmakers argue that the current system, authorizing the publishing of textbooks by private companies, does not allow for proper quality control.
Chapters about South Korea's development in the 1970s are negative and grim. Do these descriptions meet the ministry's criteria?
The current authorization system is not accountable for the content of private textbooks unless something is blatantly wrong. It is hard to filter out problems under the current system.
Main opposition party lawmakers say, however, the government's move is an attempt to embellish Korea's authoritarian past while controlling the liberty of thoughts and education.
Many historians have issued statements of boycott against government-issued textbooks, and more scholars will likely join the campaign. Why do you think they boycotted?
The government's stance is that a balanced group of experts should produce a textbook based on historical facts.
Opposition to the government's move is increasing in academic circles, adding to several university faculty members' boycott statements coming out this week. The Korean History Research Association, the largest association of historians in the country, issued their rejection statement on Friday. This follows a similar boycott by the Association for Korean Modern and Contemporary History announced on Thursday. But public opinion remains divided. According to a latest Gallup poll of over 8,000 people, 42% of respondents support the government's move, while the same percentage of respondents are against it. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
There was quick response to Korea's finance minister's criticism on Korean banks' early closing time, but only 2 financial service providers are looking to keep their shutters up beyond 4 p.m. Lee Ji-won delves deeper into the logic behind the resistance to such changes.
People are rushing to the bank as it quickly approaches 4 in the afternoon. In 2009, labor union and the management agreed the service hours up to 4 p.m. As most banks close earlier than businesses with standard office hours, it is not unusual to see workers rushing to get a foot in the door before closing time.
I came in the middle of my work because banks close earlier than I finish my work.
But there may be good news in store for those struggling to make it to the bank before closing time. Some banks in Korea have branches that open later and close later, known as after-bank service. For example, Kookmin Bank has branches open from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. But there are only 123 branches of banks with that service, most of which are concentrated in Seoul. Kookmin and KB Hana Bank say they may implement after-bank service at more of their branches. Consideration to expand such service follows remarks made by Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan. At the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank last week, he criticized bank hours in Korea, saying it's the only place in the world where banks close at 4 p.m. He also said it was the reason Korea's finance industry is poorly evaluated. However, data show most banks worldwide, on average, close between 3 to 5 p.m., with some exceptions. In Korea, there are pros and cons to a change.
Some pros include customer convenience and accessibility. But there are also cons. If banks close at different hours, the operating system will have to be overhauled, resulting in higher operational costs, such as overtime wages for bankers already working long hours.
Behind the shutters, bankers are still working on their daily tasks long after their business hours ended at 4 o'clock. The average time they go home is 8 p.m., making it almost a 12-hour workday. Facing resistance from the industry's union, Korea's finance minister may have to wait before seeing bank hours extended nationwide. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
The curtain rises for Seoul Fashion Week. The event, which runs until next Wednesday, will give spectators a peek into the fashion trends for spring and summer of next year. Kim Min-ji helps us look beyond the glitz and glamour.
The 2016 SS Hera Seoul Fashion Week opened with glitz and glamour on Friday. 68 collections from both new and established Korean designers will be showcased during Seoul Fashion Week, unveiling the latest trends for next season. Organized by the Seoul Metropolitan Government and sponsored by cosmetics brand Hera, the event features a wide array of designs and concepts, including a collection showing off the beauty of Korea's traditional hanbok.
It's about harmony, combining elements from the West and East. The collection shows how the two can go together as seen in the finale. We combined Western-style clothing with the Korean folk song Arirang playing in the background.
Futuristic styles were also in the spotlight, such as this collection fusing state-of-the-art technology with fashion.
It's the first time that 3D printing technology has been infused in Korean fashion. We use designs and textiles that are unique in men's clothing.
Despite the dazzle, the Seoul Fashion Week event has a relatively short history compared to the world's most renowned fashion weeks, namely those of New York, London, Milan, and Paris. And there have been doubts whether the runway in Seoul has been living up to its name. It still lacks global recognition, and as it takes place later than major international fashion weeks, buyers often have a limited budget.
We have a history of 15 years, but we still have a long way to go. It's about how many influential overseas press and buyers come to promote the event. Our aim is to turn Seoul Fashion Week into an event that represents Asia.
To do so, the participation fee had been subject to a hike this year, while participating designers were required to be CEOs or representatives of a brand and even have an established shop. This, however, could be counterproductive to the domestic fashion scene, as there would be less opportunities for lesser-known or up-and-coming designers to take part in the event. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The weather is just right for evening outings in Korea these days, but as blistering cold season will be here before we know it, you need to make full use of this window of opportunity. Those in the capital headed out to the Seoul Forest, where a piano festival was held today. Lee Soo-eun takes us there.
I'm at Seoul Forest. The weather is beautiful and everyone here is enjoying a picnic with a little musical touch. Today's event, Music Dining in the Forest, is part of a campaign hosted by Run Piano, a non-profit organization that aims to share music with people as they go about their daily lives.
These pianos, all donated to Run Piano, then painted by artists, are free for anyone to play.
We were on our way to eat, so we were actually just going to pass by. But we saw the pianos and just had to stop by to play them.
The campaign was inspired by Play Me, I'm Yours, a project by British installation artist Luke Jerram, who placed a piano on a street in Birmingham for people to gather around, play and listen to music, and ultimately communicate, which is exactly what's happening here today. The piano project arrived in Korea 3 years ago in the name Run Piano Festival.
The donated pianos become music, which in turn becomes a way for the people to relax. After painting them, they're redonated to community centers, where they become instruments for children. It's a positive social cycle of sharing among arts and daily life.
The weather is perfect, the trees are big and tall, and the music is so good that I feel like flying up into the sky like a bird.
Run Piano will be hosting an array of picnic concerts this weekend at Seoul Forest, so pay a visit to enjoy some music and support a good cause. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
And now for international headlines, we join Bruce Harrison from the News Center. Bruce, let's start in the Middle East, where people are getting very, very violent. Violence begets violence over there.
Hey, good evening, Daniel. Yes, in many parts of the region, there is much violent death and war. In Israel, the government blocked off neighborhoods this week to stop around a month of fatal knife attacks. Palestinians, they responded by burning a Jewish holy site. The Israeli military says around 100 people converged on the tomb of Joseph in the West Bank. They set parts of it on fire before the military could push them back. Now, earlier in the day, Israeli security angered Palestinian men by limiting their access to a mosque in Jerusalem's Old City. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attack. He's been calling for an end to the violence and ordered the tomb be repaired. In neighboring war-torn Syria, a major offensive has been launched by Syrian troops with the support of Hezbollah and Iranian fighters. And within the last several hours, Turkey announced its military shot down a drone along its border with Syria. A U.S. official said Washington believes the drone is from Russia, which has been backing Syrian troops in the area. U.S. President Barack Obama has again delayed the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. They'll likely remain there for at least another year, meaning America's longest war will not be ending on Mr. Obama's watch. Son Jung-in reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama has announced his decision to shift from his earlier pledges to end America's longest war on his watch. Speaking at the White House on Thursday, Obama said the U.S. will maintain its current force of 9,800 troops in Afghanistan through next year and draw down to 5,500 when he leaves office in January 2017. Obama emphasized that the mission remains the same.
Their mission will not change. Our troops will continue to pursue those two narrow tasks that I outlined earlier, training Afghan forces and going after al-Qaeda.
The administration had previously planned to withdraw all U.S. military forces by the end of next year, leaving behind only a small group of embassy-based troops in Kabul. But after months of deliberations with his advisors and Afghanistan's leaders, Obama said they decided to postpone the drawdown because Afghan troops were still not strong enough to beat back a resurgent Taliban and other opposition forces.
The bottom line is, in key areas of the country, the security situation is still very fragile, and in some places, there's risk of deterioration.
This marks the second delay this year. Critics have slammed Obama for entering the White House with a pledge to bring home American troops from two major wars, but instead leaving with U.S. forces engaged in three ongoing conflicts in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Pakistan held massive bonfires across the country this week, and the fuel was valued at more than $2 billion. To mark International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, the country burned hundreds of tons of drugs seized by narcotics authorities. Pakistan's anti-narcotic force said the ceremony ended in Islamabad, where a pile of illicit drugs weighing more than 320 tons went up in flames. Authorities also used a bulldozer to crush thousands of foreign bottles of liquor and more than 1,000 cans of beer. Authorities burned marijuana, heroin, cocaine, and a handful of other narcotics and prohibited substances to mark the day. And that's a glimpse of the world today. Have a great weekend.
We had another warm day today, but it was also hazy with a fine dust advisory in place in some of the Midwest areas, including Incheon and parts of Gyeonggi-do provinces. And tomorrow is forecast to be another hazy and dusty day as well for the metropolitan areas and Chungcheong-do provinces, while the rest of the country will enjoy sunny skies. And temperature readings hiked up to 24.2 here in Seoul today, and similar conditions are expected for tomorrow and Sunday, not only for here in Seoul, but for the most parts of the country. So if you plan to be outdoors this weekend to check out the autumn foliage, you'll definitely enjoy it. And speaking of foliage, 80% of trees have changed into beautiful autumn colors in Odaesan Mountain and Seoraksan Mountain, and we'll get to enjoy splendid autumn leaves for about a month or so from now on. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Daily high here in Seoul, Gwangju, Busan will all peak at 25, while Daegu climbs up to 24. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 25 and 22, while Dokdo rises to 21. But that's all for Korea, and here is international weather for viewers around the world.
That's all for Primetime News this week. Do join me for more at midnight Korea time. Thanks for watching.